for years as they try and think, well, we're going to give tax incentives, and we're going to give this, and we're going to loan low-interest loans. We're going to, so complicated. Can you imagine government guys, let's see, we'll give you a low-interest loan. No, 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 no. So we're going to say to whoever heads up Carrier, who I'm not particularly fond with right now, not a particularly fond, I don't have great feelings about him. So we're going to say every unit you make and bring into the United States, you're going to pay a 35% tax.
That was how Donald Trump said he'd convince companies like Carrier to keep jobs in the U.S. But in the end, he went with the opposite approach. According to multiple reports, Indiana will now give Carrier's parent company, United Technologies, exactly what he said he loathed, $7 million in tax breaks to keep jobs in the state, the exact type of incentive that he has criticized in the past. During a celebratory event at the Carrier plant today, Trump said he also promised to create more favorable conditions for the company if it stayed, an inducement aimed at the private sector in general.
I just want to let all of the other companies know that we're going to do great things for business. There's no reason for them to leave anymore, because your taxes are going to be at the very, very low end, and your unnecessary regulations are going to be gone.
Again, this sounds more like bribing companies to stay than threatening them with consequences, and it sets what could be a dicey precedent. Turns out the carrot approach wasn't even totally effective. While Trump bragged today that 1,100 jobs are being saved, Wall Street Journal reports the deal covers 800 Carrier workers from the Indianapolis furnace plant. The other 300 jobs are researcher and headquarters positions that weren't slated to go to Mexico, according to the Journal. The company still plans to move 600 jobs from the Carrier plant to Mexico, and that's on top of another 700 jobs being eliminated from a plant in Huntington, Indiana, that's owned by the same parent company as Carrier. Some of the Huntington workers turned out to Indianapolis today to try and get the president-elect's attention.
It's gloom on our plant, so we're down here to make Trump. We want Trump to look at our plant, not to forget about us. We feel like we've been forgotten. There's 700 jobs in Huntington that are being lost. That's 700 families that are without.
To recap, that's 1,100 jobs saved, 1,300 still leaving the country. Today, Trump again raised the prospect of tariffs on companies that outsource, but no word on whether that still applies to Carrier.
They'll be taxed very heavily at the border. If they want to leave, fire all their people, leave, make product in different companies in different countries, and then think they're going to sell that product over the border.
And joining me now is Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, you wrote an op-ed blasting this deal. You know, at one level, you could imagine a world in which you would be happy with this. I mean, it was some combination, it looks like, of carrots in the form of incentives, sticks, maybe with a threat of federal contracts. What's wrong with this?
Well, first of all, we are thankful and we're happy for 1,000 families that now have jobs that would have otherwise gone to Mexico. But you know, Chris, during the campaign, we had Mr. Trump running around the country saying he was going to be really tough on these corporations if they outsourced American jobs and threw American workers out on the street, and they wanted to bring their products back in from Mexico or China. He was going to slap a huge tariff on them. Well, it turns out that's what he said in the campaign, but what he's doing now is very, very different. What he's doing now is saying to these corporations, well, it's okay for half of the jobs to go to Mexico, where people will be paid $3 an hour. And for the other half, well, we are going to give a very, very profitable corporation. United Technologies made $7 billion in profits last year. We're going to give them a $7 million tax break in order to keep these jobs. United Technologies 2 years ago gave their CEO a $172 million golden parachute. United Technologies does not need a tax break. United Technologies today has $6 billion in defense contracts. And what Trump should tell them is, you're not getting a tax break. You're going to lose your defense contracts if you don't do the right thing and keep these workers, all of these workers, here in Indiana, rather than sending half of those jobs to Mexico.
So two questions on that. On that last thing, I mean, you have, if I'm not mistaken, you've actually called for a policy to be enshrined, much like the federal contracting policy on paying a living wage, that would essentially enshrine a policy that if you're getting federal contracts, you can't do this kind of outsourcing. Is there is there a danger, though? Is there a difference between enshrining it as policy and this kind of ad hoc approach? Is there a danger of abuse here, of essentially the president calling up various companies in the way that he does here?
Well, I don't mind a president being aggressive in trying to protect jobs. That's, I think, a good thing. What I think is an absurd thing is that the taxpayers of this country have to subsidize multi-billion-dollar corporations who are making huge profits in order to beg them to keep jobs in this country. What we should be saying is we demand of you to be a patriotic corporation. No, you're not going to throw American workers out on the street and move to other countries and expect your products to simply come back into the United States tariff-free. No, don't expect that you're going to get huge defense contracts from the taxpayers of this country. We want you to be a good corporate citizen. And what being a good corporate citizen is about is protecting the interests of American workers, not just your own bottom line and not just the salaries of your CEO. And what Trump is doing is setting a very dangerous precedent. My guess is today there's some corporation who may not have thought 1 second about leaving America. Now they're going to announce, hey, we're going to Mexico, we're going to China. Hey, Mr. Trump, what you going to do for us? How many millions of dollars in tax breaks are you going to give us for staying in America and not throwing our workers out on the street? Very dangerous precedent.
You know, that's an interesting point, because I've seen people raise this, right? That the idea that essentially Trump gets a kind of political victory in a certain sense. He gets to go and sort of be the savior of these jobs. Carrier gets a PR victory and $7 million in taxpayer money. And, you know, 1,000 people get to keep their jobs, although a whole bunch of other people are going to lose them anyway. You can imagine that being replicated if he could pull the strings on the incentives time and time again.
Absolutely. Look, you're a corporation out there who doesn't intend to leave the country. And you're hearing Trump saying they're willing to bribe you to stay in a country. These guys are smart. Oh, hey, Mr. Trump, we got 1,000 jobs. We're thinking of leaving. Give us a tax break as well. Look, the bottom line is he campaigned on being tough on corporate America, on slapping a very large tariff on them. And what he ended up doing is caving in and giving a multi-billion-dollar corporation making huge profits a significant tax break. That is the wrong policy.